वक्रतुंड महाकाय सूर्यकोटि समप्रभा निर्विघ्नं कुरु मे देव सर्वकार्येषु सर्वदा या कुन्देन्दु तुषारहारधवला या शुभ्रवस्त्रावृता या वीणावरदण्डमण्डितकरा या श्वेतपद्मासना या ब्रह्माच्युतशङ्करप्रभृतिभिर्देवैः सदा वन्दिता सा मां पातु सरस्वती भगवती निःशेषजाड्यापहा सरस्वती नमस्तुभ्यं वरदे कामरूपिणि विद्यारम्भं करिष्यामि सिद्धिर्भवतु मे सदा येनाक्षरसमाम्नायमधिगम्य महेश्वरात् कृत्स्नं व्याकरणं प्रोक्तं तस्मै पाणिनये नमः अज्ञानान्धस्य लोकस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै पाणिनये नमः Hari Om everyone. My pranams to all of you, my pranams to the Guru Parampara, my pranams to our Guru at home, because of whom we became so inspired to study and move forward and grow to ever greater heights. So to Swami Sharananandaji, my pranams. Now we will start. So last time we finished with our introduction to Sanskrit. We got to see Sanskrit in all of its glory, the bird's eye view of Sanskrit. We studied the alphabet, so we saw all of the letters. We saw that the consonants are known as Vyanjana. And Vyanjana, there's one more definition, and it says Anvak Bhavati Vyanjana. Now, because we saw the Maheshwara Sutras last time, and your homework was to memorize the Maheshwara Sutras and to look into those pratyaharas, since we saw the Maheshwara Sutras last time, I can tell you this definition. Anvak Bhavati Vyanjana. That means, now Anvak is actually Anu plus Ach, and then Bhavati Vyanjana. And so Anvak means that which follows an Ach. And remember that the Ach Pratyahara means all of the vowels. So those things which follow the vowels, which means they depend upon the vowels for their pronunciation, are known as Vyanjana. Then we, of course, heard the story of Panini, which is a beautiful, inspiring, very dramatic story. and we saw how Panini focused and he did his penance, and to him, to such a mind, were revealed these 14 Maheshwara Sutras, which we saw. And so in Sanskrit, the word is Maheshwara Sutrani, the plural of Maheshwara Sutra. And it's called Maheshwara because it comes from Maheshwara, who is Lord Shiva himself. And so we saw these 14 Maheshwara Sutras. They're ordered in a very particular way. They start with the swaras, that is the Ach Pratyahara, A, I, Un, Ril, Rik, E, Ong, I, Ouch. Then you have the Antastha. So Ha, Ya, Varat, Lan. So this Ya, Va, Ra, La are the Antastha, and that is the semi-vowels. Then we moved into Lan we also covered. Then we moved into number 5, the 5th Vyanjana in all of these rows. Remember we saw Kuchu, Tutu, Pu. So the 5th Vyanjana in each row are the nasals, Nya, Ma, Nga, Ra, Nam. Then we saw the 4th letters, Jhabhain, Ghadha, Dhash. Then the 3rd letters, Jaba, Gada, Dash. Then the 2nd letters, Kha, Pha, Cha, Tha, Tha. Then the 1st letters, Cha, Ta, Tau, Kapai. Then we saw what's called as the Ushma, the sibilants, and also the what's called as the aspirate, the Hakara, Sha, Sha, Sar, hal. So these sutras are arranged in a very special way. And we had some interesting questions on the discussion forum this week, which I again encourage you to join and post all your questions and keep following along with the questions, because much more than what happens in the class happens in this discussion forum. So I strongly recommend that you join that so that you can keep up to date with all of the discussion. But there we had some very interesting questions about the arrangement of these letters in the Maheshwara Sutras. And while it is true that these letters, when arranged in this particular way, are easier to organize for the sake of things like sandhi, for the sake of things like connecting these letters and all that. But the real reason why why the Maheshwara Sutras are organized in the way that they are, and why they are in this particular order, is for the sake of pratyaharas. And pratyahara was a concept we saw last time as well, which means the shortcut that Panini uses in order to refer to many letters at once in one syllable. So he'll say ach, and just by saying ach, he refers to all of the swaras, all of the vowels. Just by saying hal, he refers to all of the vyanjanas, all of the consonants. Just by saying al, he refers to all of the letters of the alphabet. And so as a result, the Ashtadhyayi is able to be only this big instead of this big. There would be so many volumes of the Ashtadhyayi if he had to refer to each letter separately when he was talking about many letters at a time. So he would, for example, if he does some sandhi and he wants to talk about ik, then he would have to say I, U, R, and these letters all convert into yan, which is ya, ra, va, la, ya, va, ra, la, and they convert into these letters when they are followed by any vowel, a, I, U, R, e, o, I, au. He would have to say it like that every single time. But instead, he's able to say eko yanachi in this tiny sutra, tiny pithy statement. He's able to refer to so many vowels at once, or so many letters at once. And as a result, his Ashtadhyayi is tiny. And there's one interesting statement, I think I mentioned last time, but maybe not, which is Laghava Priyaha Paniniyaha. This means that people who are Paniniyas, that is people who study Panini or who study Vyakarana, are Laghava Priya. That means they love brevity. They love shortness. So anything you can say in shorter amount of words and sounds is always better. That's always more acceptable and more pleasing. And so these are the Paniniyas. So that's what we are now as we are studying Vyakarana. So we also like brevity. Of course, in this class, it's hard to have brevity because I am explaining everything at great length, but that too is part of our tradition. The original sutra is said in a short, pithy statement. They love brevity there. But as soon as that's said, then somebody says, oh, and by the way, this means, and he gives you 3 whole books on that one sutra. So we love both things. So in this class, I'll be explaining in what's called as Vistara. I'll be explaining at length, in depth. So now that's what we have covered so far, which means that we are now eligible to jump into the study of Vyakarana. We can finally start our main study, our main course. So when we jump into the study of Vyakarana, the first thing that it's most logical to do is to understand exactly what is Vyakarana. What is it that we are about to study? So there's one nice statement, which is Vyutpadyante Vyakriyante Prakriti Pratyayadibhihi Shabdaha Anena Iti Vyakaranam. Now it's a nice long sentence, but I'll explain it in detail. Vyutpadyante. Vyutpadyante means they are created, or they are understood from their origin. So we take various parts and put things together in order to make something. Vyakriyante. They are taken apart. Those same things are taken apart. one part is separated from another part in order to understand. Prakriti pratyayadibhihi. Using what? Using concepts like prakriti, which means the essential component, the core component, like a dhatu, which means a verbal root, or a pratipadika, which means a nominal stem, and pratyayas, which means suffixes or affixes that you combine with these stems, like in a chemical reaction, in order to make shabdaha. That's the next word, shabdaha, to make words. So vyutpadyante vyakriyante prakriti pratyayadibhihi shabdaha anena means with this, using this, iti vyakaranam, and that is called vyakaranam. That thing which we use is called as vyakaranam. So that means that vyakarana is the study of taking apart and putting back together words, shabdaha, using concepts like prakriti and pratyaya in order to make these words. And what's the point of doing this? Why is it that we have to take apart words and put words back together and all that? The reason why is so that we can understand Sanskrit, of course. That's the point. The whole point of studying Sanskrit grammar is so that once we have studied it, when we see a text, then we're not like, oh my God, I can never look at that thing. It's so big. I should just do my puja to that text and I should just leave it there on the altar. No. When you study Sanskrit, it means you, through the help of all these concepts, gain access to that text. So then you can finally open it. And once you open it, you have the key. You have access to finally digging out the treasure, the gold that is hidden inside of these texts. And another reason why we study Sanskrit grammar is so that the Sanskrit that we speak today, the Sanskrit that we read today, can remain the same for eternity. So that even when we write words and everything, remembering these rules, we are able to make sure that Sanskrit remains the same. That I don't change the language fundamentally. Of course, new vocabulary will always come in, new idioms will always come in, but I don't fundamentally change the language so that even when I look back 2,500 years, 3,000 years, 5,000 years, and I see a text in Sanskrit, when I open that, I should be able to understand that directly. We saw this, of course, before, so it's not something new, but nevertheless, this is one purpose of studying Sanskrit grammar. So I advise you to remember, as you are studying, that studying Sanskrit grammar is not just about studying Sanskrit grammar. Many teachers, they make it a point to say that you will study Sanskrit grammar. Why? Because it's important to study Sanskrit grammar. Good reasoning. But that doesn't really mean anything to most people today. So remember that studying Sanskrit grammar is not just about studying Sanskrit grammar. It is about changing your life. It is about learning how to think. It's about learning how to think systematically so that when you learn something, you break it up properly. When you speak, when you express yourself, then you express yourself precisely, exactly, using carefully chosen words in order to get your message across perfectly. Studying Sanskrit grammar is not just about studying Sanskrit grammar, and it's not even just about studying Sanskrit. Studying Sanskrit grammar is about changing your life. It just so happens that the tool that we are using in this class to do that is Sanskrit grammar. So that's something very important to remember. We are not just interested in the actual grammar, but studying the grammar gives us what is known as the Shastra perspective, the understanding of how ancient people used to break things up, how they used to categorize things perfectly, how they used to study the world. And in their study, the clarity of their thought that was there gets somehow transferred into us also. So when we study, then we become the beacons of this clarity then people see us and they're like, wow, I wish I could think like that. I wish I could speak like that. Somebody who has studied Shastra, when they talk, then you see them, you see Swami Advayananji is doing another webinar series, the Panchadashi and Jivan Mukti Viveka. When you hear him talk, you think, man, that clarity of knowledge, that clarity of thought, where does it come from? It comes from studying the Shastra. And so in this course, we will dive into the actual Shastra study. Shastra in Sanskrit means discipline. Literally, it means discipline, and discipline, even in English, the word discipline means a branch of knowledge. We say the discipline of psychology, discipline of science, discipline of social sciences. So discipline, the word, of course, we know is to keep yourself under control. And it also means the field of study. So too with the word Shastra, it means that which disciplines your mind because you are studying something in a very systematic way. So Shastra is that systematic study of something. So we will be looking at Sanskrit grammar systematically so that we can gain that type of thinking as well. So I hope that through this course, you will start to see that change in your life. You'll start to see how you are looking at the world through this lens and able to break things up perfectly precisely. So now let's take a bird's eye view of Sanskrit from the lens of grammar, of course, and see if we can make some sense of it before we zoom in. So what we will do is first we zoom out, okay? So now if you could share my screen, please, that would be very helpful. And I will show you something very interesting. There's this video I saw that zooms out from the earth and it keeps zooming out, all the way till you get to the edge of your universe. And then it zooms in and it goes in way beyond where you started. And it ends at the smallest level quark. So I've actually included that video in our helpful materials for this week. And I've got some points for you to think about. So please view that when you come out of the class so you can see exactly, it gives you a picture of how we're looking at Sanskrit grammar. So we'll zoom out, then we'll zoom in. Okay. So here's our screen. Okay. Okay, so we've got this big giant screen, okay? This is all of Sanskrit literature, just imagine. Now, Sanskrit literature is so vast that there's no end to it. There's no edge. The more you dive into something, the more you find, oh my God, there's more and more and more and more texts there. You're like, wow, I thought I studied everything. And suddenly there's 100 commentaries on that. Then there's 100 commentaries on one of those commentaries, and so on and so on. So as you dive in, you just keep going and going like the ocean. It just never ends. So we have all of Sanskrit literature here. Now it's in this nice big white box. It's not accurate, but nevertheless, let's look at it like this. So we've got this zoomed out view, these giant galaxies of Sanskrit works, these big constellations of disciplines and all that we want to access, but we don't know how. So now we start to zoom in a little bit. And we find that the rishis, these old sages who were responsible for developing this, were really good at categorizing things. They categorized the entire universe in 100 different ways. And so they also categorized Sanskrit literature as well into various themes. You have themes that run across Sanskrit literature. So sometimes we are interested in the study of logic, epistemology. This theme is what is known as Nyaya. And within that, as we go, we find hundreds of thousands of texts that explain that theme. Then we have another theme, the study of the self, the study of the Atma, the study of who I am. That's the study of Vedanta. And you have hundreds of thousands of texts within that theme. So we have these themes that are helpful for us to break up Sanskrit literature into manageable chunks, where it's like, okay, I want access to this study, so I look into this theme. It's like entering a library, which can be overwhelming at first. I went to Cambridge University, and there they have one of the biggest libraries in the world. And that library has some 8 million books. So when you go there as a student for the first time, you think, yeah, I'm going to study. Then you enter the library and you're like, oh my God, how can I ever read all of this? And then they say, you don't have to read all of that. You have entered into the university to study a particular theme. So why don't you come to this section of the library, which will tell you about this theme? Then you go to that section and you think, oh my God, there's so many books here. How am I ever going to read all of these books? So they have all these themes which help us in categorizing Sanskrit literature. So here we've got theme 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and of course you can go on for infinity. Then once you have entered into a theme, then you say, now what do I do? Okay, my theme is Vedanta. I want to study Vedanta. Now what do I do? And everybody just looks at each other confused. Okay, here we are. And you're in the library and there's thousands of books looking at you. So then what they do is, okay, so here we have, etc. Lots of themes are there. Then what do they do? These themes are broken up into various topics which are taken up in different textbooks. You have different textbooks that cover various topics within these themes. And those textbooks are known as granthas. Okay, very simple thing. So here we've got one Grantha number 1. This Grantha number 1 will be one topic within the theme. Suppose our theme is Vyakarana. Grantha number 1, Ashtadhyayi. Okay, Grantha number 1 written by Panini. Then you've got Grantha 2, Grantha 3, and so on. Now you open this Grantha and you say, oh my God, what is this? What am I studying? I've opened the Viveka Chudamani by Adi Shankaracharya Bhagavan in order to study Vedanta. Now what do I do? How do I access this thing? It's so big. So we very happily break it up into topics. So you have topic 1, which is broken up by usually by chapter or by section, something like that. So you'll have adhyaya, you'll have sarga, you'll have various ways of breaking up these verses. Topic 1. And of course, within that, there'll be topic 2, 3, 4, 500. Then you see the topic and you think, now, how do I read this? So they are very conveniently broken up into sentences. So what we have to do is we're zooming in now, zooming in into exactly what's going on. Remember, vast Sanskrit literature, we've zoomed in by the power of 10, 20, 3,000, 5,000. Now we're in sentences. That sentence also is broken up into parts. The sentence too can be broken up into words. Now we've reached the limit of our white screen here. So we have to go to a new screen in order to break up a word. But you see, as we're zooming in, we are making it more and more and more and more manageable, more and more and more and more accessible. So here we've got word. Now we see next screen. Oops, sorry. Here we go. Okay. So let me bring us to the beginning of this one. Okay, here we go. So we have a word. Now, a word also can be split up into parts. A word also is made up of smaller bits, our neutrons and protons of our word. So the first part is known as Prakriti. Prakriti means the basic unit of our linguistic thinking. The basic unit of linguistic thinking, Prakriti, literally the word means nature. But remember that each Shastra, each discipline has its own technical terms. So in Vyakarana, we also have a list of technical terms, which I want to use the second half of the class to discuss. But Prakriti is one of those, and it means that component which is derived from nature. When you look outside of you, there are various things you see. You see actions and you see things. And both of those things are things from which you can derive a particular sound, a set of sounds. And so the sounds derived from actions are known as dhatus. Dhatu is one type of Prakriti. And the sounds derived from nouns are known as Pratipadika. This is another type of Prakriti. And a Pratipadika is actually just a Dhatu, but mixed with something to make a new. So I will explain in more detail. The slide gets more detailed. The other side of it is Pratyaya. Pratyaya is like it's called an affix or a suffix. And Pratyaya is that thing which comes in that we apply onto this Prakriti to make the Prakriti expressible by us in the form of a word. So Prakriti and a Pratyaya come together and they have some kind of chemical reaction, and they react and they form this thing which is called a word that is usable by us in speech. You cannot use a Prakriti by itself. Suppose I say one dhatu, gam, which means going, to go. So I say gam, but that doesn't have any meaning by itself. It doesn't express anything. It expresses only that there is some action of going, but that's not usable by us in speech. Instead, I have to mix it with one pratyaya called, let's say, tip. Okay, tip is one pratyaya, and I mix it, I bring it together. Now gum and tip come together, and they have some chemical reaction, the nature of which we will be studying throughout this course, and together they form gacchati. Whoa, how did they change like that? That's the reaction I'm talking about. We'll discuss that. Now gacchati is something I can use because it means there is one agent of that going. That agent is being expressed in the third person. Now suddenly it refers to something. Now as soon as I say Ramaha, the word Ramaha, then Ramaha means the one who is doing that going. So that gacchati is usable by us in speech, but by saying gum by itself doesn't mean anything. So, okay, the example given, and by given I mean the example that I will give, is in chemistry you have these two, or not chemistry, but in the world you have these two substances. One is called sodium and one is called chlorine. If you eat sodium by itself, what happens? You die. And if you eat, and you have chlorine, which is a gas, if you inhale chlorine by itself, what happens? You die. If you eat sodium by itself, you die. If you inhale chlorine by itself, you die. But when you put these two things together, they react, and what do they form? They form table salt, without which you cannot eat. So similarly here, you have a prakriti which is by itself unusable, not something you can eat or anything or speak. And you have a pratyaya, also something that doesn't mean, if I say tip by itself, it doesn't mean anything. But when I combine these two and I say gacchati, that is a word without which I cannot express myself. So prakriti and pratyaya are there. Now, the two types of prakriti. One is called a dhatu. Dhatu is a verbal root, or an action principle. Then we have pratipadika, which is a nominal stem. That means a noun, a stem of a noun. We'll get into this in detail. Then you have pratyayas are also of two types. There are pratyayas that attach to dhatus, which are different, and pratyayas which attach to pratipadikas, which are of course also different. So these two types of pratyayas attach to the two types of prakritis, and together they make the words that we can use in our sentences. So this is the breakup of a word. And then of course, even these can be broken up into individual letters. These are our God particle of Sanskrit and of any language. What I want you to do in this week is to see how your language, the language you use most naturally, is put together and is broken up. This is the study of Vyakarana. So see in your language how these elements function with each other, how they interact with each other, and how they finally make up the sentences, which is the building block of the language that you use. We say that atoms are the building block of our universe. But despite saying that, there are smaller particles than atoms also, right? There's even protons, neutrons, electrons, and even those can be broken up. Similarly, what we say in Sanskrit is that the sentence is, which is known as a vakya in Sanskrit grammar, is the building block of language. Sentence is the smallest unit that is understandable in Sanskrit language. But even that can be broken up into words and prakriti and pratyaya and aksharas. But nevertheless, the sentence is the smallest unit of our expression. Then, of course, we build it up: paragraphs, chapters, books, collections, libraries. So, okay. Now, let's take a look at a sentence. So once we've zoomed in this much, let's take a look and see how exactly does a sentence work? How does it interact with itself? Okay, so here, here we go. Okay, we have one simple sentence in English. This sentence says, Rama is going to the forest. When we break this sentence up, we have one type of word, going. This word going is the glue that puts the whole sentence together. Without going, there's no relationship between Rama, forest, is, to the, there's no relationship there. So that going, which is the verb of the sentence, is the glue that keeps the whole sentence together. So the verb is the most important part of a sentence. And then you have Rama and forest. These are our two nouns in this sentence. And these two are somehow related through the relation of this word going. Okay, fine. But in English, if you just say Rama going forest, it doesn't make much sense. It's not proper. It's not grammatically correct. Why? Because we don't know what the relationship is between Rama going and forest still. We just say Rama going forest. So we put these little words in between, is. And we group that with going, is going. Now, when I say is going, suddenly I know that I'm talking about one person or one thing who is doing the going. And then when it comes to forest, we put it together like this, to the forest. Suddenly I know that forest is the object of that going. And Rama, therefore, because it comes before is going, is the agent or the one who is doing the going, the one who is actually going. So we have these little extra words which we have to put in order to connect these parts of the sentence. Without those extra words, it doesn't make sense. So is going is one little unit, to the forest is another little unit, and putting them together you get Rama is going to the forest. Then it makes sense in our heads. This is a sentence in English. Now we see the same sentence in Sanskrit. Now remember, the first 3 weeks were so that you could learn how to read Devanagari. I gave you all the tools you needed. Now I'm not going to use the Roman transliteration anymore, just for the sake of space, time, all that. So I hope that you have learned that by now, and I will only be using simple things like this, so no need to worry too much if you can't read it so fast. But nevertheless, I hope you can now at least put together the letters. So Ramo Vanam Gacchati. Here, we don't have, so we have Ramo, which means Rama, Vanam, which means the forest, and Gacchati is the going. But you don't see those little connecting words. You don't have is, you don't have to the. And the reason for this is because those little markers, is and to the, are already built into each individual word in Sanskrit. So when I say Ramo, which is Ramaha, but because of the Sandhi rules, because of these rules of putting words together, it becomes Ramo, let it be. But Ramo means Rama, and Rama means As soon as I say the word Ramaha, I know that there is only one Rama. I know that Rama is the one who will be doing the action. Okay. And I know that it's masculine. All these things I know just by saying Ramaha. Then you have the word Vanam. That Vanam, that at the end indicates that Vana, which means forest, is the object of Rama's going. Already we know that. And Gachati, of course, is the verb, and that Ti at the end of Gachati indicates that it goes with Ramaha. That it's talking about one person who is doing the going, and that person is being talked about in third person. That much we know just by saying Gachati. So all these markers are built into the words already, which means that no matter where you place the words in the sentence, suppose I was to, just for our entertainment, suppose I was to put this here. Vanam Ramo Gachati. That also means exactly the same thing. And there is no confusion, there's no ambiguity about it. What if I was to put Rama here? Vanam Gachati Ramaha. That's also fine. Because Ramaha already includes the whole, everything it needs. Vanam already includes all these to the business. And Gachati already includes the is part. So therefore, it doesn't matter where I place these words. Suppose I put Vanam at the end here. Ramo Gachati Vanam. Also, it means the same thing. So, in Sanskrit, because of the nature of words, which include their parts of speech, which include their relationship to the verb is still the glue, of course. But because each word includes its direct or indirect relationship to the verb, therefore, wherever you put it in the sentence means the same thing. And that's why we are able to have such rich traditions of poetry, because for us, word order is less important. So you just you arrange the words however they fit best into a particular meter, and there you have your verse. So we can have such a rich tradition of poetry and everything is written in poetry. Even philosophical texts are written in poetry. Even stories are written in poetry. Poems are, of course, poetry. You have all kinds of things. From the most mundane of things to the deepest of things are all written in poetry. And the reason why, and of course it doesn't have to be poetry also, you have things in prose as well. But the reason why is because the flexibility of Sanskrit allows us to do that. And it becomes so much easier to remember. So we had this oral tradition, which allowed us to express something in poetry, and somebody would remember it immediately because they are knowledgeable in the ways of meter. And then that just becomes part of them. When I study something, it just becomes part of me. My knowledge is no longer relegated to books and calculators and phones and iPads. My knowledge is here. It's no longer outside. So anyway, so Sanskrit allows us to do all these things very easily, and that makes it very powerful. Okay, so now we've zoomed into Sanskrit to its extremely small quark level. So now we come back out a little bit. We've seen these sentences. So now we see there are two types of words in a sentence. One type of word is known as a Kriya Padam. The word Kriya Padam means action word. Kriya means action and Padam means word. So you have action words, i.e. verbs. Now the Kriya Padam can be broken up into 4 parts. It has 4 components. When you study it this way, Sanskrit isn't so terrifying, is it? It's just, okay, it's nice. We've got these little categories. And as soon as you break things up into these categories, suddenly your mind is able to understand them. And when you understand them, everything becomes so easy. Sanskrit grammar is actually really, really, really easy. But if you want to see a really simple topic be explained in the most difficult way possible, you just have to see one Sanskrit grammarian explain them, teach one Sanskrit grammar concept. Somehow we've gotten into this habit of explaining simple things in very complex ways, And as a result, people are scared of Sanskrit. They're scared of Sanskrit grammar. But it's actually very, very easy. So we'll explore the ease of that in this course also. Okay. Okay, so it's broken up into 4 components. The first component, as we already saw, is the dhatu. The dhatu is that set of sounds which have been derived, as we saw already in the first class, that have been derived directly from the experiences that are present in the universe already. So that is dhatu. That's why it's called prakriti, because it comes from nature already. Okay. Then you have the second part, lakara. This lakara, because I have written dhatuhu, I should also write lakara like this. Oops. Okay. This lakara means the different tenses and moods that that dhatu can be expressed in. Dhatu means your verbal root, like gum, or like ram, or like pa, or da, or pat, or vad. These are all various roots which have their own little meaning that are derived from nature. And lakaraha is applied onto that dhatu to make it expressible in a particular time or with a particular intention. So time means, suppose we take the dhatu pat. Pat means to read or to study. And I put the lakara onto it, lat, which means present tense. Then I would say pathati. Pathati means is currently reading or studying. That action which has begun but not yet ended, that's called present tense. Then you have another lakara. You put on lot, which means the imperative or a command type of thing, or a request, or a prarthana, what we call. Then it becomes pathatu, which means you study or read, or let that person study or read. So that's also a lakara put onto that. Or you have lung, which means a past tense, apathat, that person studied before. Or you have vidhiling, pathet, may you study, like that. So you have these different lakaras which transform the dhatu in various ways, not the dhatu, but they transform that kriya padam in various ways in order to express different times and different intentions. Then the next component is purusha. Again, we'll put this. Purusha means the person that you're speaking in, first person, second person, third person. But in Sanskrit, very interestingly, prathama purusha means first person, literally. But in Sanskrit, what we call as prathama purusha in English is what we call as third person. There is something very interesting to be noted here, something interesting we should learn from this. In Sanskrit, naturally, the first person, the most important person is the other person, what we in English call as the third person. So Sanskrit is a language, remember, the language transforms your universe, it transforms your mind. So think about this. In Sanskrit, your most important person is the other. It's the other person. So when we behave then with this framework in our mind, always the other person is the first object of our thought. Is that okay? Is that person doing fine? Are others okay around me? And of course, naturally, everybody else is thinking the same thing. So we all take care of each other. We build this network of support for each other. Okay, so prathama purusha. Then you have madhyama purusha, which means the middle person, but in English it's translated as second person, which is like you use these diminutive forms, which means you're saying tvam. Tvam means you, but it's used to speak usually to a child or to someone younger than you or someone very close to you, or to God. I don't know why these go together, but that's how it is. Or to God, or to your mother many times. So like that is for people who are very close to you. Then you have Uttama Purusha. Uttama Purusha means the great person, the best person. And that means first person in English, what we call. So Uttama Purusha means the one who is responsible for my actions in order to take care of the Prathama Purusha, which is the other. Okay, so we have Purusha. Then you've got the next component of Kriya Padam, which is Vachanam. And so here also I will finish the word here like this. Vachanam. Vachanam means number. How many are there? How many are we talking about? And you have three of those also. You have Ekavachanam, which means one. Dvivachanam, which means two. The dual, we have a dual in Sanskrit as well. And Bahuvachanam, which means three or more. The plural, many. So that is the different parts of a Kriyapadam, of a verb. Then we move to the next thing. Next type of word in a sentence is Namapadam. Namapadam means a noun. Anything that is not a verb is a Namapadam. This also can be broken up into 4 components. The first component of a Namapadam is the Pratipadika. This Pratipadikam means the nominal stem. And Pratipadikas are also theoretically formed from dhatus. So actually dhatu is the basic unit from which we get even a nominal stem. So for example, remember gam is that basic unit of the verb gacchati. That's the dhatu. But even from that gam dhatu, we are able to make pratipadikas like gata, which means gone, one who goes, gataha. Or we are able to make gamyamana, for example, something like going one, something like that. So we're able to make these things from dhatus also. Pratipadika is that nominal stem, the stem of a noun. Yes. And then the next part is called a vibhakti. Vibhakti means the declensions of that noun. Because remember, even within the word, all these little parts are contained. So we've got declensions, and there are 7 declensions in Sanskrit grammar, which indicate the parts of speech of a sentence. So if we go back to let's go back to our Rama is going to the forest. Without the word is and to the, you would not know which part of speech forest is. For example, to the is that those 2 little words, these 2 particles, which shed light on, or they reveal the part of speech of this word forest. Similarly, that at the end of vanam reveals the part of speech that vana should be. And therefore a vibhakti, which is the declension of that word, is also known as a dyotika. Dyotika means that which reveals. It reveals the part of the speech of that word. So here we are back to Namapadam. Okay, so vibhakti. Then we have linga. Linga means the gender. In Sanskrit, we have 3 genders. Very progressive language. We've got 3 genders. We have a masculine, feminine, and neuter. It's called neuter. I don't know, these words in English sometimes don't really do it for me, but those are the words that we know, so I'm explaining them like that. But it means something like that which doesn't have a gender. And so you have different types of words. So say I say Ramaha. This Ramaha, because of that aha ending, because of that aha ending, we know that it is a masculine word. Or say you say the word Rama, this a tells us that it is a feminine word. Or you were to say, for example, Patram, then that Patram tells us that at the end tells us that it's a neuter word. So we have 3 lingas. Then Vachana, again we have Vachana, this word. Vachana means number. How many are there? You will notice that there is one thing which matches between Namapadam and Kriyapadam. So here's Kriyapadam. Let's look at it closely again. Then again, we look at Namapadam. What is it that is the same? It is this Vachana aspect. Vachana. Vachana means number. So when you write words in a sentence, all of the things which you are relating to the Kriya Padam directly have to have the same number as the Kriya Padam. So if I say Gachati, which indicates one, the Vachana of Gachati is one, then Ramaha, I have to say, Ramaha is also only one Rama. But if I say Gachanti, which means plural, more than three or more, that's the Vachana there. Then I have to say Ramaha, which means many Ramas are going. So the Vachana always has to match. That's the one thing which overlaps between these two. And the Vachana is what indicates the relationship between these two things. So these are the different parts of the sentence. Now we have 7 minutes left. Srijitji, if you can stop sharing the screen, that's enough of looking at a whiteboard. Now let's just talk. So we have seen now the different layers, the different levels, the zoomed out version of Sanskrit in all its glory, and the super zoomed in part of Sanskrit, also in all its glory. And so the very interesting thing is that the study of Sanskrit grammar, it looks at both of these things simultaneously. You're always connecting the micro level to the macro level, constantly doing this. So we'll also try to do that. I don't know exactly how practical it'll be when we have 1 hour each week like this. We'll try. But what we are going to focus on in this class, what is the objective of this? Many people have been asking, so exactly what will you do here? Although it's written very clearly on our website in the webinar description, but nevertheless, those of you who joined because a friend told you to join or something and didn't read the webinar description, I'll explain a little bit about what we are trying to do in this class. What is the purpose of this class? First of all, of course, as I have said many times, we want to remove the fear of Sanskrit. So you should forget this notion that Sanskrit is inaccessible and impossible and huge and vast, and I just can never touch it. I can never read it. Let go of that notion is number one. Number two is not only you should not have the fear of studying Sanskrit, but you should also know how to access it now. So exactly what are the steps required to go deeper into that, which we have already started covering today. But additionally, and most importantly, what I want to do in this class is give you the Shastric way of thinking, give you exposure to that way of categorizing, classifying, putting things together that the rishis had, so that you also can start putting your universe together in this way. And the way in which we will do that is by studying something at the very micro level. In this class, we will be studying the Kriya Padam element, because that's the most important part of a sentence. Without the Kriya Padam, no sentence is possible. And even a sentence that doesn't have a Kriya Padam has a Kriya Padam. Because even if I say Ramaha Putraha, that means Rama is a son. But that asti, which means is implied in that sentence. You cannot have a sentence without a verb. Therefore, we will focus on that Kriya Padam element. And within the Kriya Padam element, what will we do? We will take a look at many dhatus. In fact, we will take a look at every single dhatu that is possible in the Sanskrit universe. That means 2000 dhatus that are said by Panini in his Dhatu Patha, which is one of the books that you may have purchased if you were preparing for this class by purchasing the books. Otherwise, I'll be uploading the relevant sections in PDF format online as we go along. So we'll be looking at all of those dhatus and the way in which they are formed when they are combined with 4 different lakaras. Remember, lakara means those different tenses and moods of the Kriya Padam. So there are 4 lakaras that are made in the same way. And so we'll look at those which are lat, lot, lang, and vidhiling, which are the four examples I gave today. Lat means present tense. Lot means what is called in English as the imperative. You should know that word, but don't get caught up in it. It means requesting, asking, telling, all of these things are there. Lang, which means the past tense that happened before today. Any past tense that happened not today, so yesterday and before, is lang. And finally, we have vidhiling, which is also a type of request, asking, telling. It has the same meaning as lot, actually. So these four are what we will cover. There are a total of 12 different lakaras. 12 lakaras are there. So of those, we will be covering 4. We'll go more into depth as we go along, but this is what I want to cover. So that means that by the end of this course, you should be equipped not only to recognize, but also to create. Remember, vyutpadyante vyakriyante shabdaha. That means you take apart and you create words. So we want to learn how to take them apart, but we also want to know how to create with all of the relevant sutras from Panini, all of the relevant rules that Panini has stated, which nobody studies anywhere, by the way. This will be something that we get uniquely in this class, especially if you're in a Western country. It's not, you don't get that anywhere. In India, of course, there are lots and lots of centers of study of Panini sutras, but we will be looking at it through the sutras, the rules actually. And so you should be equipped to take any dhatu and say any form of that dhatu in these 4 lakaras, which means 2,000 that come directly from Panini in his dhatu patha, and the infinite number of dhatus that you can create using different affixes or suffix pratyayas that make new dhatus out of these old ones. I'll give one example. For example, you have pat. Okay, now pat means the original dhatu from Panini, which means to read or to study. Then you add one pratyaya, which is called sun. You put pat and sun together and you get pipatisha. Pipatisha is now a new dhatu, which means to desire to study or to read. That's a new root, which has its own versions of lat, lot, lang, and vidhiling. So we will learn how to do that for every single dhatu, and that is not given by Panini, that we have created by putting the pratyaya on there. So we will learn how to do that through this course. So that is the objective, and we'll take you step by step in a very logical order, make it very easy for everybody. Okay, let's look at the questions real quick. I'll answer 1 or 2 and then we will end. Okay. Please scroll down, scroll down, scroll down, scroll down. Okay, yes, this was a question that came up from last week's homework. I'm very glad you did that, which is that in learn, in that Maheshwara Sutra, learn, you saw there's like a Chandra Bindu, you know, that dot on top of the la. And people were like, what is that? Why is that there? And the reason is because in the same way that the na, ka, I, e, ong, the nga, cha, these ending letters of the sutras are used in order to end a pratyahara, the that sits between the la and the na is also used to end a pratyahara in certain cases. So we'll see that as we go on. One question that nobody asked last week, which I was surprised, but that's okay. I'll ask for you. That's what the style of the Shastra. So you think about it this week is what, when you say ayun, rilrik, eong, ayouch, that's okay, all the vowels are there. But when you start saying haya, varat, lan, yama, gana, nam, jhabhai, then there is an in between all of those letters. There is that that hides in between those. Why is that not included in our pratyahara? When I say the pratyahara hal, I only say the letter ha, ya, va, ra, la, yama, gana, na, jhabha, gara. I don't say ha, then ya, then va, then ra, then I don't say that. Why is it not included? That's one question I want you to think about this week. Okay, please go down, keep going. Okay, great. Somebody answered. Wonderful. Keep going, keep going. Okay, when are we going to get the PDF versions of the books? As we go along, the relevant section I will upload in case you need it. Right now, you don't need to worry about that. Okay, that's enough for now. The questions I couldn't answer today, please go on to the discussion forum. It's awesome. That's a nice place for you all to have discussion with each other, conversations. Sometimes people can answer your question even if I'm not there to answer it. So put it on discussion forum. Everybody take a look. Don't skip that. You go to forum.chinfo.org and you sign up there, and it's awesome. So you can have this conversation style thing going on there throughout the week. And the homework for this week, I will post on the Google Drive. I want you to think about language. How is it that your language works? How is it broken up? How have we put it together? Start thinking of it this way. Start to see it in this very interesting Shastric way. And then I will put up some exercises that you can do online on the Google Drive as well. Okay, so that's all. We'll conclude now. Please put on the concluding mantra. There, that invocate. Okay, thank you. Great. So now we will conclude. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Thank you all very much for joining us today, and see you next week. Hari Om.